Queerboys, more like the Queerboys.
I gave my love a cherry that had no stone. I gave my love a chicken that had no bones. I give... Sorry.
Welcome to the Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast. Music from the wrong side of the tracks. This is a show that drags you through the gritty alleys of sleaze rock, gutter glam, and all forms of dirty rock and roll. We're here to crank up the volume and dive deep into the dirtiest, sleaziest, most glamorous rock and roll out there. Whether it's the classics or the underground hits, we've got you covered. And now, here are your hosts, Andy and Gary.
Today's episode, we're going to tackle the London Quireboys. And the London Quireboys were a band that was formed in 1984 in London, England, with strong ties to Newcastle. The band got its start when Jonathan Gray and Guy Bailey meet in a South London tavern and find that they share a love for the same type of music and bands over a few pints of lager. They then decide to create a band of their own, and Jonathan Gray was gifted with the nickname Spike from the spiky hair he sported as a teen. This moniker was given to him by Italian workmates at a job site laying paving stones outside of Buckingham Palace. They thought his spiky hair was similar to Rod Stewart's, and the nickname stuck, and he is now forever known as Spike. Spike and Guy began writing songs and looking for potential band members, and after seeing a movie from 1977 titled The Quireboys, which was a corrupt cops drama with a who's who of Hollywood stars making cameos like Charles Durning, James Woods, Randy Quaid, Louis Gossett Jr., Burt Young, Perry King, among others. Well, they decided that the Quireboys would be a good band name. But when their Italian co-workers hear of the name the Quireboys, they quickly take the piss, as the English say, out of the boys and say, Quireboys, more like the Queerboys. And they all had a laugh, but strangely, in an effort to stick it to the man, says Spike, they decide to keep the name Queerboys.
They recruited a bass player named Nigel Mogg, who was related to UFO frontman Phil Mogg. They replaced a departed drummer with an American named Rudy Rickman, formerly of the Maria McKee-fronted band Lone Justice, and also picked up a second guitarist under the suggestion of Phil Mogg by the name of Ginger Wildheart. The Queerboys built a following and become a bit of a house band at the Marquee Club, because they would open up for just about anyone. They opened for a lot of well-known bands, including former New York Dolls' Johnny Thunders, the Cherry Bombs, which featured a lot of Hanoi Rocks members, a very unlikely pairing with guitar virtuoso Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yngwie.
Easy for you to say. And they even opened up for an up-and-coming Guns N' Roses. By 1987, the band's name was starting to hold them back, and because of this, several dates with Andy McCoy's band had to be canceled.
The band were also booked to play the Reading Festival on the understanding that they would change their name, so they went back to their original idea of the Quireboys from the title of that 1977 cop movie, only they changed the spelling to the Quireboys with a Quireboys shortly thereafter, and have kept that name since. But before leaving as the manager of the band, Phil Mogg gets the Quireboys on as the opening act for the entire Guns N' Roses Faster Pussycat 1986 UK tour. Mogg then bows out of the manager picture.
The band signed a record deal with Survival Records, an entry-level label for EMI Records, for the meager sum of £18. They released their first two singles, Mayfair and There She Goes, to some success, And the band were getting noticed by heavyweight band managers, and the band ultimately signed with Sharon Osbourne, wife and manager of Ozzy Osbourne.
And the band was then taken under the managerial wing of Sharon Osbourne. Osbourne secures the band a record deal in 1988, and the Queerboys were signed to EMI in the UK and Capitol Records in America. The band soon learns of another band in Australia using the same name Queerboys, but with the traditional spelling. Back then, there was an unwritten rule that if two bands shared the same name, that the band who had music on the actual charts first would be granted control of the name. And so, depending on which Spike interview clip you wish to believe, as I've heard two now from Spike's own lips, Sharon Osbourne offered the Australian Queerboys either £20,000 or £120,000 for the name, but the band turned her down. Now, I don't know, £20,000 seems more believable to me than £120,000, but, you know, what do I know?
£20,000 seems more believable to me, especially if you know any history about Sharon Osbourne and her father and the way they did business as managers.
Spike says years later that he runs into one of the guys in the Australian Queerboys and was told that the band now wished they had taken the money as their record label dropped them shortly thereafter. So to avoid legalities in the States and a few other countries, they become the London Quireboys. But once that Australian Queerboys ceased to be, Spike and the boys dropped the London and have been known as just the Queerboys forever after. Well, the band then flew from England to Los Angeles to begin recording their debut album, and they spent 5 months recording at Cherokee Studios in Los Angeles, with mixing done by Ron Nevison, producer of UFO, Thin Lizzy, The Babies, and others. And here's a cut from their debut album, A Bit of What You Fancy. This is 7 O'Clock by the London Quireboys.
And during the recording of the album, the band were frequently visited in the studio by rock royalties such as Tom Petty, Rod Stewart, and even Don Henley from the Eagles. The debut album is titled A Bit of What You Fancy and was released on January 29th, 1990. The album peaked at number 2 on the UK charts and had several hit singles, including 7 O'Clock, I Don't Love You Anymore, and their highest charting single, Hey You, which reached number 14 on the UK single charts. And here's a bit of that single, Hey You, from the debut album, A Bit of What You Fancy.
She was dreaming of. She don't want me, that's alright.
The album entered the UK charts and had good reviews, but the good times retro feel of the Queerboys had the band compared to a number of early 70s outfits, and the parched, raspy quality of Spike's singing has seen him compared even more frequently to Rod Stewart, to which Spike replies, "Look, me and Rod Stewart have one thing in common. He doesn't think I sound like him, and I don't think I sound like him. I think Rod Stewart's a great singer. I've met him, and he's a lovely bloke, one of the nicest persons, but he wasn't a massive influence, and I couldn't name 5 Faces songs if asked. I was never a fan. I'm 24, and Rod Stewart was to me, do you think I'm sexy? I sort of grew up listening to me sister's old records, and she loved the Stones, Joe Cocker, Bad Company, and Free." And here's a good example of that retro good-timey feel on the song Man on the Loose from the London Quireboys, A Bit of What You Fancy.
Take what you give him. Call the shots. You make the move. He's gonna cut you. He's gonna cut you dead. He don't care, but it's alright. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. He don't care, but it's alright. Head is down, his collar's up.
The band were riding pretty high and ended up touring on the Monsters of Rock tour, along with Whitesnake, Aerosmith, and even Poison. That same year would also find them opening shows for the Rolling Stones in Spike's hometown of Newcastle, and opening for David Bowie in Germany. The band toured heavily across the U.S. as well, and we were lucky enough to catch the show at a small club here in Phoenix named the Mason Jar. And they put on a high-energy show, despite being a large band crowded onto a very small, cramped stage.
So the band began working on their second album in October of 1991 with Uber producer Bob Rock at the helm, but saw numerous delays due to Rock's other engagements, most notably Metallica's Black album.
And then after Rock finished his work with Metallica, he decided he needed a vacation. So ultimately, the boys had to wait a full 9 months before starting work on the new record. And of course, the Queerboys made the most of this time off by partying and living the rock star lifestyle. And between the delays and the extended recording process, Bitter and Twisted finally hits the shelves in March of 1993. And from that album, here's the Queerboys' take on the 1970s classic AM radio staple, Brother Louie, originally recorded by the band Stories.
Took her home to meet his mama and papa.
the musical times, they were a-changin', and the album peaked at number 31 on the UK charts, which is still a good showing. And even though the record did well worldwide, it didn't perform as expected, and at this point, both Sharon Osbourne and EMI Records, they cut their ties with the band.
The length of time probably between the albums effectively stalled the band's momentum, and following the release of Bittersweet and Twisted, the band disbanded for 8 years. Guy Griffin attributed the breakup to business stuff and the emergence of grunge music. There have been many reformations and reunions starting in early 1995 and again in 1999. They have 18 official albums available currently on platforms like Spotify, but ironically, the only album not available on Spotify is the original recording of A Bit of What You Fancy, the very first release. And what's odd about that is that the Queerboys re-recorded A Bit of What You Fancy for the 30th anniversary edition of the album, which is available on Spotify, so go figure.
The core members of the Queerboys have always been Spike on vocals, a couple of guys named Guy on guitar, Guy Bailey and Guy Griffin, Nigel Mogg on bass, and Chris Johnstone on pianos and keys. They replaced a departed drummer with an American named Rudy Rickman, formerly of the Maria McKee-fronted band Lone Justice. And the band seems to have gone through about as many drummers as Spinal Tap.
The band's seemingly endless array of revolving door musicians has resulted in a listing of 21 former members, some of which include Jason Bonham, Cher Ross from Vixen, former Robert Plant and Jimmy Page drummer Michael Lee, who passed away in 2008, and Ginger Wildheart, who was the Queerboys guitarist from 1987 to 1989. Ginger was fired from the band and was replaced by guitarist Guy Griffin. Ginger claims he was fired by being too wild for the band, but Spike says that's bollocks, and the real reason he was given the boot because Spike was a fan of Newcastle United Football Club and Ginger was a fan of arch-rival Sunderland. All problems weren't about drugs, drinking, or women. It was because he supports Sunderland. And man, I'm being deadly serious with you. What Ginger actually told an interviewer was that he was well into my drugs, but the rest of the Queerboys only drank, which was funny, as months after I left, they were all in the Betty Ford clinic with coke addictions.
And what would this story be without a bit of band drama? In March of 2022, the band announced that they had relieved Spike from his vocal duties.
How do you get rid of the founder of the group and the lead vocalist of the group? I don't know, but they did. This ultimately led to two separate versions of the Queerboys, causing confusion among the fans and continued legal struggles over the ownership of the band's name, as you had Spike's Queerboys and Guy Griffin's Queerboys. One interesting note was in the Guy Griffin lineup was the bass player formerly of the band Enough's Enough, Chips Enough, and man, this guy gets around, a bass mercenary to be sure. In Steven Adler's band, he's in every band. Also interesting is that across the pond in America, another band was mining the same musical territory as a young group supporting their very first album, and that was the Black Crowes and Shake Your Moneymaker, which was released on February 13th, 1990, while the Queerboys' A Bit of What You Fancy was released 15 days earlier on January 29th, 1990. Both Spike and Chris Robinson apparently worshipped at the altar of vocalist Steve Marriott of Humble Pie fame. And so that pretty much wraps up what we have so far on the history of the London Quireboys, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you around for our next episode.
And be sure to join us for episode number 4, where we discuss both the sea hags and the nymphs and the connection that ties them together. And to our fallen comrade, Mr. Mink, I think Pink Floyd said it best. Wish you were here. You're here in spirit, brother.
Godspeed, Mink, wherever you may be.
Been listening to the Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the dirty world of rock and roll. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast for all the latest updates, news, and more.
Got questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes? Reach out to us at rnrguttermail@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
So join us again next time for another wild ride through the raw and gritty side of rock and roll. So until then, keep it trashy.